Hey, this is Eric, and you're watching the Boulder Brew. Today we are talking about the AeroPress, and specifically one of the first questions that a lot of folks run into when they begin using it, which is how do you keep the coffee from leaking on out as it brews? And the reason you don't want that to happen is just, it's not going to be the end of the world, but it does result in some under-extracted coffee kind of seeping on through and mixing in with the more properly extracted coffee after you plunge. So altogether it makes the results a little less consistent and a little harder to control. That said, there are two very easy ways to keep the coffee from leaking. One is, instead of brewing in this position like I'm holding it as per the instructions, you turn it upside down and the seal in the plunger solves your problem. The second is to keep it right side up, but we're going to stick the plunger back in while it brews. And that will create a seal that causes back pressure to hold at least most of the water in place. So join me in my coffee station here and we'll take a quick look at how you actually do that. To brew with the inverted method, we set the AeroPress upside down on the counter with the filter cap removed and the plunger most of the way out, then fill it up with warm water to preheat. We'll go ahead and weigh the beans out like we normally would. I highly recommend a ratio of 14 grams of water per 1 gram of beans. In this case, I'm doing, I believe it was 10 grams of coffee, so we're going to have 140 grams of water. Of course, those total amounts aren't that important as long as the ratio is right, and as long as your grind is consistent, then you're almost certainly going to get a really terrific cup of coffee. Now that I've finished grinding, I'm going to pour that preheating water from the AeroPress into my mug, so our AeroPress will be empty to start the brew and the mug will preheat while it brews. Now I'm going to pour in about twice the weight of coffee in grams of water. So with 10 grams of coffee, that's roughly 20 grams of water. And then give it a nice swirl so that everything is evenly mixed and there's no little dry lumps of grounds remaining. And after that has sat to bloom for just a moment, I'm going to pour in the remainder of the water, bringing the total up to roughly 140 grams. And now we'll leave it here for roughly an additional minute and a half. So when you're ready to plunge, you're going to very carefully turn it over with the cup on top. Give it a quick swirl so that no grounds are stuck to the plunger still. And now we're going to gently push it down over the course of, I would say, about 30 seconds at a minimum, maybe 45 seconds to a minute if you're doing a full, if you've got the chamber entirely full of water for a large serving. The reason, by the way, to push so slowly is that a very vigorous push will force a lot of coffee out the sides of the filter cap, and you'll end up getting a little bit more sediment in there as well. So easy does it. Now for the right side up method using the plunger as a stopper. This time we're going to start out with the filter and filter cap installed right away. And we'll pour some hot water in to wash the papery taste out of the filter and preheat the mug. Now we'll measure out coffee again using, as I mentioned before, a ratio of 14 grams of water per 1 gram of coffee. Now that the coffee is ground, we empty the preheating water out of the mug, and we're going to pour the grounds into the chamber. As before, we'll add a bit of water to bloom, roughly twice the weight of coffee. So 10 grams of coffee, therefore, in the ballpark of 20 grams of water, and give it a quick swirl so that everything is mixed in. And after just a second more passes there, we'll fill up to the 140 grams of water, keeping that 14:1 ratio. And one final swirl so that there's no dry clumps. And this is an important part right here. Notice I'm kind of squeezing the chamber to create a little bit of a gap for air on the side of the seal. That lets me insert the plunger just a little bit with enough air passing through that gap that it does not squirt very much coffee out. Now, the plunger in place is going to create back pressure so that the coffee stays inside the chamber and just a very tiny bit will actually drip through, as opposed to a good chunk of it dripping through if we didn't do that trick with the plunger. And I would have waited a little longer if I were actually drinking this cup, but just for demonstration purposes, we'll assume it's finished steeping after another minute and a half, give or take, and gently push the coffee out, looking for around 30 seconds of pressing time. And there we have it, 2 ways to make your AeroPress coffee without it leaking through, one being the inverted method, one being the right side up method, but strategically fitting the plunger in just a half an inch or so for the back pressure. Hope you found this useful, and if you have any other AeroPress tips that you want to share, I would love for you to leave a comment below and let others know what's been working out for you. See you next time.